Hello and welcome to Photographic Connections, the podcast where we create connection to self, nature and others through the art of photography. My name is Kim Grant, the founder of Photographic Connections and your host for this podcast. And today I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Adam Karnacz onto the podcast. Adam is a landscape photographer and YouTuber based in England. We speak about how beginning his working life as a police officer really helped him to deeper understand the human condition, as well as the highs and lows of having a YouTube channel and how we can use our photography to inspire others, while also discussing the importance of connection with ourselves, with others, and of course, with nature. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Adam Karnacz. Adam, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast this week. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. And when I began this podcast back in March, I asked our Instagram followers who they'd like to come on, and your name came up a few times. So I'm sure there'll be a number of listeners today that are really, really excited to listen to what you have to share with us. And as I do with every guest that comes on this podcast, we like to begin by going way, way back to the beginning of your life and seeing where your connection to photography, and you also have a very deep connection with nature, where all that came from. So if you're happy to kind of go way back to the beginning and speak through kind of like your kind of life process and life journey into developing a passion for your photography.
Yeah, of course. Thanks Kim. Thanks so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be on your podcast. Where did it start? It started, I think, in the place I grew up, which is in the northeast of England, where I lived really close to the North York Moors, and the sort of town I grew up in is surrounded by woods, and I lived quite close to the edge of the woods. So my entire childhood was kind of based around two things. Firstly, being outside during the day, like with my friends and stuff, and going in the woods and making dens and riding bikes and playing football and cricket and things like that. And then in the evening we used to come in and play computer games where I guess the kind of a more technical aspect of me sort of came about. And then all that time I spent outside as a youngster turned into just a passion for being outdoors. And I mean, I think looking back on it now, I live in Leeds now, in the city, and it's nice enough, but I was very privileged to have that upbringing of being able to walk out my front door and go straight into the woods with my mates. I feel very lucky to have had that, but you take it for granted, don't you, when you do have that. I lived close to the seaside as well, so yeah, it was just a great place to grow up. Then my dad was into photography. He was a teacher originally, but then he worked for a chemical company, as a lot of people did around that part of the world. But he was in the training department, and at one point they were doing some outreach work with schools, and they had a mobile darkroom. So he used to drive around to different schools, helping kids to take photographs and develop film and stuff and photographs, and that was quite exciting. So I got to do that quite a few times, and that kind of sparked a little bit of a passion for photography. And then when I was 16, I went to America with my friend and his mum, and we visited Yosemite in Yosemite National Park, and that was just incredible. But before we sort of took the road around Yosemite, we stopped at like a garage place, and I picked up this little disposable film Kodak camera that had this sort of special panoramic film and lens on it, which was really exciting. I think that must have had like 24 or 32 frames in it. And as we were going around Yosemite, I kept asking them to stop the car so I could get out and take a photograph. And in the end, they sort of got sick of me asking and stopping the car. And they're like, "Oh, we've got Ansel Adams in the back here." And I never really knew who he was at that point. But after they said that, I sort of did some research. And yeah, just kind of discovered him, and then discovered people like Joe Cornish, who was famous for taking photographs around the area I grew up in. Yeah, and it just sort of sparked a love of photography, which matched with my love of being outdoors and the landscape. And then I got to like my early adulthood, sort of late teenage years, and got distracted by other things and ended up and wanted a bit more, I don't know, a bit of adrenaline and excitement in my life. So I eventually went to London and joined the police, where I loved the sort of first half of my police career. It was very exciting. But then in the second half, things didn't go quite according to plan, and I was starting to have some issues with it, the way policing was going and things. And then I started doing some wedding photography on the side. Started off doing a couple of friends' and families' weddings and stuff, and just bits and pieces here and there. Yeah, and then started doing it, doing full weddings and stuff, and that started to earn me some money that I sort of used to start building up a business on the side, and then moved back up north, and then eventually a few years later left the police once the sort of YouTube stuff took off. And yeah, that was it. I mean, the YouTube stuff was weird. Like I started doing it and I didn't tell anybody at work that I was doing it. But yeah, people just started watching. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this as well. People just start watching, don't they? And you think, all right, then I'll just keep doing it. And people say nice things, and people seem to get stuff out of it. And then, I mean, one time when I went into the office at work, and like I said, I hadn't told them, and one of them sort of said a line that I say in the videos quite a lot, and they was like sat behind me, and they all started chuckling, and I was like, oh no, I've been busted. So they're all like winding me up for quite a while about that. But then, to be fair, in the end, they said, to be fair, there's not a lot to take the mick out of because it's actually quite good. And I was like, oh, fair enough. Yeah, and then left the police a few years later, or a couple of years after that, and yeah, just sort of trying to make a career out of full-time photography, which is not always easy, but it's definitely interesting. So yeah, that's how I've got to here, I think.
Amazing. There's a lot in that that I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into. It's really interesting, actually, that you've kind of gone full circle now in many ways, because you've kind of gone back to where you were in some ways as a child, being back in nature and connecting to the beautiful scenery and kind of traveling around the country, enjoying that and getting back into the photography world. And I always find it really funny. A lot of people seem to diverge and we go into kind of more stereotypical careers. You know, like myself, I went into nursing rather than photography straight away, even though photography was always in the background. Yeah. And you've obviously had your career in the police. But it's interesting because these kind of careers, they really allow us, when we do end up doing photography professionally in many aspects, the things we learn through those times really, really help us in progressing forwards. And you said, it says on your website that your kind of time working as a police officer really helped you to understand the human condition. And that's one thing I love about your videos, is you kind of go in quite in depth sometimes about the emotion, the almost psychology, the philosophy, the things that photography brings to you. So how do you feel your time kind of working a lot with people in quite difficult situations and sometimes has really helped you now in developing a sort of like persona or niche within your photography? Like how has your policing career helped you with that?
It's got to the point where it's become difficult to separate what, like, the different parts of me. I'm not someone that can compartmentalize. So it's kind of, it all blends into one. So I wouldn't be here doing this if I hadn't been a police officer and gone through all those experiences. It's simple stuff, really. It started off, like it is for so many people, doing photography as an escape from the things that you might deal with in your everyday life. And in my everyday life, I was dealing with stabbings and domestic violence and missing kids and all sorts of horrific stuff, but as well as some funny and good moments as well. So I think it's important, and that was all in the city as well, because I worked in London in the Met, and it was all in the city, so that I always felt that calling of the wild, essentially, to return to that. I think the way I talk about it on my channel, though, and with photography generally, I only recently came to the realization that it isn't entirely selfless. Like, I think there was, when I joined the police, prior to that, I'd considered joining the Army or the Navy, but because I had asthma, they rejected me at that point. But I think there was always this sense of duty or desire to do some sort of public service, which obviously I ended up doing as a police officer. And I mean, you know that, being a nurse. Like, it's sometimes cliche, isn't it, to say, oh, I just want to help people. But I think there was an element of that, if I'm being honest, because I heard a quote recently where they said, like, the best way to help yourself is to help other people. And I think that's absolutely true, especially when if you're going through difficult times, or so, I think that's the best way to get out of it sometimes. And I thought I don't think I would have been. I don't think I could have ever been a full-time photographer without doing the YouTube stuff, because it can be quite lonely. And although I enjoy my own company, I do also like people and being around people. And I kind of want or hope, maybe I think that there is an element of public service in what I do in my videos. I mean, certainly the last video I did, I was talking about different aspects of heroes, whether it's the hero shot that everybody loves that you've taken, or whether you meet your photography heroes. But then at the end, I kind of talked about the real people that I think are heroes, like, because I'd had this really nice message from a veteran, but I was also talking about police officers and nurses and sort of people that you never hear from. Do you know what I mean? Like, they are the real heroes. But what this guy who had emailed me said is that my videos, and other people like yourself and others that we all know, the videos inspire them, and they give them the confidence to be able to go out and do photography and give it a try. And that connection to nature that they're making, and that aspect of being creative, has restored some hope in their life. And I think I've had a couple of people now say, like, photography saved them. And I just think that's really powerful. So if my videos go some way to doing that for people, then I guess it is providing a public service. I think it's probably a little bit maybe ambitious or audacious to claim that, but certainly, like, other content does that, doesn't it? Like, even fictional content, like, you get so, like, people need entertainment, don't they? They need some inspiration in that way, and it comes in like I think comedy does that. It's like healing, isn't it? That sort of laughter. And so, yeah, I think I don't see why someone going out and taking landscape photographs can't do the same thing if they're kind of telling an interesting story at the same time. See, I like I said, I don't now. I find it really difficult to separate, like, me, the photographer, and me, the kind of filmmaker and YouTuber, and I don't think there's any need to. Like, we get people sometimes say, like, we're not real photographers or we're not real professional photographers because we're doing YouTube, and I just think that's ridiculous, because it's just another line of revenue. It's another way to communicate with people. It's another way to tell your story. I don't think it's any different to the way any professional photographer has ever done it in the past. It's just a new, well, it's not that new anymore, but it's a different medium to communicate with people and to, I mean, we use it as marketing as well, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I really don't think it's anything different to what's come before. It's just, obviously it's probably not suited to everybody, but I don't think we should have to apologise for that, really.
No. It's interesting, isn't it? The world of photography's definitely changed a lot over the last 10 years. And I guess the more traditional streams of income, like prints and getting commissions and all that, it isn't possible to earn a proper living on that, really. I mean, you might sell a few prints here and there and get the odd commission, but because there's so many photographers now and so many good photographers in every different stream, it is interesting. So I remember when I started YouTube, I got the same comments, but in the beginning I was never intending to do it as a business. It was never my intention. And I kind of get that sense with you in many ways, because you were still working in the Met and you were starting your YouTube and doing it kind of in secret. It was almost like you weren't really intending for it to become a professional thing. It sounded like you were just doing it for fun. Am I right? Am I right in kind of saying that? And it just kind of snowballed into a business.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. Yes, that is true, but it wasn't a kind of directionless thing. I wasn't. It was just, well, I was starting to feel unfulfilled, I suppose, with being in the police, and so I decided to do something about it. Because I mean, I don't know if you know any cops, but they like to whinge, and they like to whinge about not being happy with their job. And there's a saying that the job's effed, is something police officers say quite a lot. And I was thinking, well, I can sit here and complain, or I can start doing something else. Even if I do finish my career as a police officer, I'll just have this thing on the side, which I can focus on. It can make me feel positive, and I'll just see what happens with it. So, yeah, I never really intended it to become my career, but likewise, I was always open to that prospect happening. But at first, it I don't know if you felt the same, but it just feels ridiculous at first, putting yourself out there like that. You're just thinking, why on earth would people listen to me? Like, what have I got to offer that anyone's going to be interested in or listen to? But I think that's true of anybody. You don't know until you put yourself out there. I find that with people that are afraid to put their photographs out there as well. I always encourage people to do it, and it's just like, just do it. Like, you're not and then you're not in control of it anymore, and what will be will be. And I think there's something quite sort of cathartic in that you're not being your own gatekeeper anymore, and you just sort of put yourself out there and do it. I think that's quite exciting, actually. Yeah. And those first kind of 100 subscribers, it was just so exciting as you hit those sort of, like, you hit 10 and then you hit 100 and then you hit 1,000. You're just thinking, oh, this is like incredible. I remember I did a video not long after I'd started the channel. I think I was talking about the ability of the iPhone 6S or something to take photographs, and I did a little review of it, and I got like 400 views in the first couple of hours, and I was like absolutely thrilled. But I think those I think you've got to sort of peel back from that a little bit, because the numbers are just arbitrary, really. You just got to enjoy the process and enjoy putting your work out there. And I talked recently on a video about, I believe in the rule of one, where if one person likes it, you can guarantee that someone else will too. And that works the other way as well. If someone dislikes it, you can be sure that someone else will as well. And then it's just how that ratio sort of plays out, but you don't need to worry about it. If people like what you're doing and your core audience likes what you're doing, then yeah, just keep doing it and do interesting things that people find fascinating or inspiring. I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, the YouTube thing's funny because it's like at the beginning you kind of get the odd kind of, like you say, 100 views and 100 this. It's like, it's such an incredible thing. And then as things evolve, it's a weird thing, isn't it? Because then you start becoming like you want to kind of earn a living from it, and the dynamic kind of changes a little bit. I've kind of found, and you've been doing YouTube now for many years. So How do you find it now in terms of your enjoyment for it? Because you clearly love being out there, you love creating videos. But how has your kind of relationship, do you think, with YouTube and what you do kind of changed over the years?
Yeah, like I said, at first it was brilliant, and then after when I first started, my second daughter was just a baby, so I was going to work for an 8-hour shift, whatever time that was during the day, and then coming home and being a dad. Then at the end of the day, I'd go up to the sort of studio room upstairs and film a video, and I was doing that twice. I was putting 2 videos out a week for the first year, and then it kind of it was just that whole period is just a daze, because I was getting like 3 hours sleep a night, and I don't, mostly because of my daughter more than anything else, but it's just a bit of a blur, that period. But there was quite a lot of growth in that first year. And then then after that first year, it was kind of around the time that Casey Neistat was doing his vlogs on YouTube. So I thought I'll give that a go. And so I went out and filmed a vlog just of me doing landscape photography. And I was kind of thinking, well, I'll do it a bit like how Casey does, but just talk about what I'm doing. And then when I posted the video, I hadn't really thought about it being, because the photography vlogs didn't really exist then. I hadn't really thought about it being a photography vlog. So I didn't show the photographs that I'd taken. And everybody who watched it was like, well, can't we see the photos? And I was thinking, actually, yeah, that makes quite a lot of sense. I don't know why I didn't do that. So on the next video I did. And then I think I'd done about 4 or 5 of the vlogs. And then someone commented saying, oh, have you seen Thomas Heaton? He's doing something similar. And then I sort of checked Tom's channel out, and yeah, it was kind of really good stuff, and felt similar to what I was doing. So, and I think it was around that, probably like a few months later, that the kind of concepts of the landscape photography vlog became a thing. And I think Ben Horn had been doing it for a while in the US as well. So yeah, I mean, that was a fun period. And then, I mean, over the years it's changed. I've gone through periods of loving it and then periods of really not enjoying it. And that I've had a period like that over the last couple of years since the lockdowns and stuff. That made it really difficult, because like we could have gone out over lockdown because it's my job, but it just didn't feel right because no one else was going out. So, and that's when I got the studio here as well. Yeah, and I think photography's changed so much over the last few years as well, and I've been, because obviously during the lockdowns, like some photographers just got obliterated, and it's kind of became really obvious how delicate it is to be a full-time photographer. And I think the online stuff and the video stuff definitely gave me a lot of resilience against that downturn in the sort of photography economy. But it's not stopping that threat to the photography industry is not going away. I mean, phones are now good enough for 95% of people. AI is obviously going to create some issues as well. I think I've come out the other side of that now, though. It is what it is, and I mean, the AI genie's out the bottle and it's not going back in. So I think it's really about getting back to basics, like getting back to where it all started and going out and having those experiences and doing landscape photography and telling those stories through the photographs and through the videos that will combine to do, or I think they do combine to do something that AI will never be able to do. I don't think anyone's ever going to be inspired to recover from their PTSD by listening to an AI. Do you know what I mean? I just can't see that happening. It's those human connections that are important. And I think when I started when I first mentioned that I used to be a police officer, I think that sort of probably gave me some credibility in terms of being able to talk about the more philosophical stuff and the sort of human condition element of what I do, because I've probably, as many nurses have as well, experienced a couple of lifetimes worth of seeing the best and worst of what humans are capable of. So if some of those experiences, like I talk about in my book, my book is somewhat autobiographical. Like I tell some sort of stories from my time in the police and some of the things I learned from that, and mix it in with some of the nice pictures. But yeah, I think if any of that provides a bit of comfort to people, or a bit of perspective to people, or a bit of inspiration to people, then yeah, I think it's worthwhile. And like I say, that kind of thing can only come from people and our interactions and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's been my journey. I think I've come, just in the last few weeks actually, I've kind of come to the decision that I'm going to just really focus on that side of things and get out there as much as I can as well, and just try and enjoy the photography as much as I can, and do it that way. Because that, I mean, like I say, that can't be replaced. So it's
no, yeah. And people
hopefully make some more. Go on, sorry.
I was going to say, people definitely pick up on that as well. You know, when you're out enjoying yourself, people can sense kind of that energy that you're producing, and see your excitement and your wonder. And yeah, like if you go out and make a video where you're not really feeling it, like people can feel that as well. And it's interesting there, isn't it, the kind of YouTube world, because it's kind of gone from being seen as like this bad thing by many people in the photography kind of professionals to something now where we're realising that it's actually an incredible thing. And you'd mentioned Thomas Heaton there, you know, and I'm sure you saw this, but he made a video recently about why you should start a YouTube channel as a photographer, or what he would do now if he was starting, because you know, it's like that recognition that because of AI coming in, and because of the kind of traditional maybe streams of income with photography are in many ways falling away, it's like creating that human connection again, that experience, that stories. And the only place and way you can really do that is through media, whether it is through taking photographs and writing stories about it, or creating videos about your adventures and your experience. And yeah, I think it's amazing actually, because you've mentioned a lot there about the public service and how that kind of gives you credibility, and it really does. Like, YouTube is amazing. Like, I get a lot of messages like you do about people who are going through really deep, dark times, and how photography kind of helps them get out of that. But they kind of need to see other people out there doing it, and see that what photography can do for them. And yeah, definitely the medium of video is incredible for that. And I think it's really nice that you've kind of gone into the landscape world as well, rather than any other aspect of photography, because it gives you that deep connection to nature as well, which is so incredible for that healing element. So yeah, what do you think was do you think your conscious decision to get more into landscape photography was, again, to try and give you a different world than your human interactions as a policeman, get you more into nature and give you that solace? Like, how do you feel when you're in nature, and why did you feel so drawn to landscape photography in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the connection to nature is just so important, and it's been overlooked, I think, for the last, 20 or 30 years. I think all this ties in together. So from an economic point of view. So with YouTube, for example, and with professional photographers, the explosion of popularity in photography as the internet became a thing and digital became a thing, so many new people, including me in terms of being a professional, so many new people got into photography. And it became, and it continues to be, a supply and demand thing. Whereas over time, the demand for photography has probably gone down as video has become easier to do, the demand for still images has become less and less. At the same time as the supply of good photographers has gone through the roof. And what that means is that the competition increases, and the need for a unique selling point or something that's going to get people's attention from you is greater than ever. And I think that that may at times be unfair, I guess, because, for example, if you want to start a YouTube channel and you struggle to talk to people or just talk fluently, then it's going to be difficult. I mean, I think I've always been a half decent communicator from being in the police, but to be fair, when I sat down in front of the camera for the first time, it was absolutely dreadful. So I think you can practice it, but if you're not confident or about being on camera, or you just, you know what I mean, you've got that anxiety where you really don't want to do it, then it maybe isn't for you. But I think people should give it a try. Like I think Tom Heaton said that on that video, didn't he? Just stick a phone in front of your face and talk to it for a minute, even if you never put it out there. And I think that's good advice, because everyone can improve. And I think everybody has a story to tell as well. But it's definitely challenging. But with the internet as well, and with the rise of social media, it's meant that we don't have to every day go out of the house or away from work in order to socialize with people. I heard this, I was reading this article or podcast the other week, and it was talking about this concept of the third place. So you have your home where you live, you have your work where you go to every day, and then in the past everybody had a third place that they went to commune or socialize. So that could have been something like the pub, or there were like the church, for example, or a camera club, or a social club, or sports club, that kind of thing where people went to. And that's been eroded and eroded over the years, as people now just are kind of sat tapping their phones on social media, or watching YouTube, I guess, as well, and doing that every night. And even just the sort of act of going out the house in the evening has stopped for a lot of people. And as we've become more and more digital, and our lives have become more and more digital, and more people live in cities, over time, our connection with nature has slowly been disappearing. It's why I think the concept of the metaverse is absolutely disgusting. Like, who would want to live in a virtual world like that? It's just, I actually don't think it will ever happen. I think we'll do it like we play I think we'll probably do it like we play computer games, but I don't think we'll do it full time, because I don't think people truly understand how much we need a connection to nature and to reality as well. And I think as we see the rise in levels of depression and anxiety and things like that, I think that a lot of that can be solved by getting out into nature, being around other people and socializing away from work and from home, and then thirdly, by being creative or telling stories, because that's what we do. That's what we did naturally as humans. Like we sat around a fire in a cave telling each other stories. Do you know what I mean? That's how we came together in the first place. So I think it's important to, I guess now you have to artificially introduce that back into your life. And going out and doing landscape photography is just a fantastic way of doing that. The one thing I miss, though, is that it's not always as sociable as you might like. I've reached out to like quite a lot of people in the past who've often not wanted to do anything because, I don't know, maybe I think it's a genre that attracts very introverted people, isn't it? So that's one. I'd like it if I was doing it with other people more often. That would be something that would provide a lot of fulfillment, I think.
Yeah, you've touched on some very, very important things there, I think. Loneliness is one of the biggest epidemics that we're dealing with. And, they've shown that, when you're lonely, you naturally feel more depressed, more anxious. You've not got that social connection. You've not got that kind of security that we're used to having, many, many years ago in tribes and part of these groups that you speak about. And definitely that disconnect with nature it's so profound. And I mean, I've never really felt it because I've been so lucky to always kind of live in parts of the world that is reasonably accessible to nature. And even the one year that I did live in a city, I would literally every weekend I was like, I need to get into nature. But I can't imagine what it must be like living in these cities so disconnected from it, because it is something we innately need. And I think in many ways it's beautiful that we have managed over the last few years, despite all the struggles and everything, to keep going with our YouTube channel, because the way I'm kind of envisaging things moving forwards is, rather than viewing myself as necessarily a photographer, I'm trying to use my photography and my videography and my realisation that we need this connection to nature, what it does for our well-being, and that connection and inspiration to help people with their own well-being. And it's through people like ourselves creating videos and speaking about things like this on podcasts that people may start to think a little bit more about, oh yeah, do you know what, I don't spend as much time in nature as I maybe should, and I kind of realise that it's having an effect on me. Or people might start be feeling that loneliness and that difficulty to get outdoors, and it's trying to find means to inspire these people. And I think, what we do and what we will continue to do moving forwards, I think could have a really positive effect. If we view it kind of that way, I'm trying to get away from the kind of commercial business head and actually think about, what can I give people? What inspiration can I give them? And how can that positively help their lives?
Isn't it? That's it. Because once you get set up as a professional and you're doing YouTube and videos, it's difficult to not think about having to maintain it and make the money to pay to put food on your kids' table and stuff like that. That's always in the back of your mind. But I think one of the sort of realizations I came to recently was that really what I like doing is providing value to people, whether that's through the photographs or the tuition or anything else, or it's through the videos. It doesn't really matter. That's so I was thinking when I create videos now, and I've probably not always done this, the main thing is to provide some sort of value to people, and the audience particularly. And if there is any sponsorship, that's absolutely secondary. But that's not always easy. And I think you touched on something interesting there, because talking about like you're more comfortable being a YouTuber, and I think what I've noticed over the last few years is, well, probably since the lockdown and stuff, is that a lot of people have downed tools. Like they've lost interest in photography, and that's understandable because, like I say, I think it's difficult to get away from that supply and demand thing. I think people need to feel a purpose for what they're doing with their photography. Hopefully we can give them that back, but I don't think there's anything wrong with, particularly from a business point of view, diversifying into other things and trying to widen the reach of what you're doing and widen the audience that you're appealing to. And I think certainly that's true with the outdoors stuff, because if you look at like the hiking stuff and backpacking stuff on YouTube, it's way bigger than the photography genre. So I don't think there's any. I think that's a new group of people you could help. Do you know what I mean? Like you're trying harder to appeal to the backpackers and get them to take a camera with them at the same time and start making some better pictures. So or it might be that with the photography audience that you already have, you're encouraging them to get out and do more backpacking, or you're trying to talk about the positive effects on your well-being and that kind of. There's so many different directions I think you can take it in, whilst remaining authentic. And I think it's also important to sort of draw on your own experience, whatever that may be. And it's. I mean, you've got to take your opportunities as well, haven't you? When they crop up, because you don't always know what's going to happen. But I think that's a good thing with experimenting and playing around with different things that you do as well, is that you just don't know what's going to land, do you? Right? And it often comes from unexpected places.
It's interesting, actually. I watched one of your videos recently where you were speaking about, over the years, sometimes you'll create a video and you don't think it's going to do particularly well, and it ends up doing really well. And sometimes you spend a lot of time and effort on a video and you love it and you put it out there and it doesn't do very well. And it just shows that when you're out there creating, sometimes the things that we don't feel is our best messages or our best work, other people resonate with it. And it's that kind of thing, isn't it? It's that kind of a good thing to share with anyone listening, and the same with, their images. It's like, regardless of whether you think they're good or bad, everybody sees something different. Everybody will take something different from your images or take a different message from your videos. And sometimes you just have to put it out there and just one person, like you said earlier, if just one person benefits from that or takes a positive message from it, then it's totally all worth it. Yeah.
That's 100% true with your photography, because it's one thing I learned when I was a wedding photographer. Like, the pictures that I thought were the best photographically often weren't the bride and groom's favourite. Because you don't know them that well. You might capture a moment between them and their best friend. You know what I mean? That means so much to them. And you could have never known that. So you're capturing those moments that connect with people rather than the art of photography. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's true with landscape photography and any genre of photography. In fact, the image, you can't know what particular aspect of an image is going to connect with, how it's going to resonate with someone or connect with someone. So I think that's part of the reason why it's just so important to just put it out and see what people think. And I think you might want to create a standard for yourself. Do you know what I mean? I think, and only you can know what your standard is. But then once it gets to that sort of 3-star standard, that's my standard. It's like 3 stars when I'm in Lightroom at the start of the editing process. If it's less than 3 stars, it's getting rejected. But I'll still put a 3-star image out there. And sometimes people might see that as a 5-star image, and they might see my 5-star image as a 3-star. So it's all very subjective. With the videos, though, the rough comes with the smooth, because it can be very soul destroying sometimes when you've put like days and days and days and hours and hours and hours of work into a particular video that you've loved, and then it just absolutely tanks on YouTube. And then it's doubly frustrating, because you then look at the audience retention, which is a really good way of telling how much the people that have watched it have actually liked it. And your audience retention's incredible. And the people that are watching it are sort of seeing how they're seeing what you felt about it, and it's really connected with them. But then the YouTube algorithm just seems to annihilate you. And it's frustrating, because sometimes it feels like you're playing a game where you just don't know what the rules are. So it's just like, it feels like there's a big element of luck sometimes. Definitely over the years as well, I think we've got to the point now where content is not king. I don't think it is anymore. Like, I think it's equal to the title and thumbnail. If you're not putting a very decent amount of work into your title and thumbnail, then your videos are not going to do well. If you think you can just put like some wholesome sounding generic title and people are going to watch it just because it's you, then you've got another thing coming. Like it's you've like there's so much, like it's the supply and demand thing again. There's so much competition for eyeballs and attention on YouTube now that you've got to give people a reason to click on your video. I mean, I'm the same though. When I go on YouTube, I'll get distracted from a photography video because I'm watching something about how to screw a piece of wood to a wall or like play a particular guitar riff. Do you know what I mean? There's so much other stuff I watch on YouTube that's not photography. That's true of everybody. So you've got to be like, not only are you fighting against the other channels in your genre, and I don't think it is a competition actually. I think everybody helps each other by building up that genre. But you're also competing against gamers and DIY people and anybody else that creates content on YouTube, and that can be emotionally draining. But I think if you just sort of see it as a matter of fact, then it's kind of becomes a little bit easier to deal with. And you've just got to, if you're going to operate within that system, which is an ad driven revenue system, you've just got to play the game and not moan about it. I think and if you don't want to do if you don't want to play in the ad driven revenue system, then put it on your website. Do you know what I mean? And let people discover you through Google or something else. So it's the rough with the smooth. But the main thing I now am concentrating on is just making that connection with people and doing that through different mediums, whether it's on my website, through the sort of stuff I do with my education platform on the Rorium, or whether it's on Twitter, or whether it's through my email, or you just got to do as much as you can to kind of connect with people and it's that element of discovery as well, isn't it? Like if people don't know you're there, they're not going to watch your stuff. And you see people sort of feeling guilty or feeling a bit cheap for putting themselves out there and promoting themselves, but you've just got to do it. Like, and the way to not feel guilty about that and not feel cheap about that is to provide the most value you possibly can with every single post you put out there, and for it to be authentic as well, and your intentions to be true in terms of you're not just shilling the latest bit of gear. Do you know what I mean? I think that's important.
Authenticity is definitely key, isn't it? It's about just being as true to yourself as you can be. And I think we've all fallen into that trap of trying to maybe produce stuff that's not quite us because we think it'll do a bit better or because it's what other people are doing. And it's really funny. I've kind of gone through that cycle so many times over the years, but I've kind of got to a stage, and it's only really been in the last 4 months where I've kind of got to the point now where I just think, I don't see YouTube as a competition. I don't think I ever have actually, but I'm realising more and more the importance of, just working together and just having that community aspect and not seeing somebody who's maybe got more subscribers or views than me as competition. I see them more as somebody that I can learn from and that I can direct other people to learn from, and kind of creating more of that kind of community dynamic.
I've always definitely got that from your videos. Like, you're kind of very open and honest and authentic in your videos. It's not true for everybody though. Like there are some photography YouTubers out there that do see it as a competition, and they're very protective of what they've got. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's a mistake though. I think, firstly, I think the audience enjoy the crossover. I know on the few occasions that I've done stuff with, a couple of standout collaborations I've done for me are with Andrew Marr, the Australian landscape photographer. That was one of my very first collaborations, and that was just fantastic. And I've stayed friends with him over the years. I think I really enjoyed what I did with Morten Hilmer Like we've become friends now as well, and I think people enjoy that crossover. And personally, like I'd like to do it more often. I think it'll benefit. It's win-win for everybody. I think it benefits me. It benefits the other person. It benefits the audience because they like seeing that crossover, and it also benefits the whole photography genre on YouTube and just promotes the whole concept of everything we're talking about. Because I think a lot of the really popular photography channels are nature photography related, aren't they? Whether it's wildlife or landscape. I think you've got people like Sean Tucker, who has sort of the street photography genre, and he takes a more philosophical approach. And I spent a bit of time with him not too long ago, and he's just a great guy. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot more scope for doing stuff together and including the audience somehow. I just can't quite figure out. Can't quite figure out how to do that. One thing I've always wanted to do is do like a big kind of meetup with the audience, but it's difficult with landscape because I don't want to kind of attract 50 people to a particular landscape. Do you know what I mean? Because you don't want to, because of the kind of desire to protect nature as well. So I'm a little bit torn. I might have to do it in a city at some point and just do some cityscapes or something.
Or you find a nice remote place that's got enough, that's got like presentation rooms, and then you break everyone up into little groups and you do like a big collaborative thing where each photographer takes a small group to a different location. Things like that have been done up here in Scotland the last few years with a photographer. She's got other photographers up. There's been presentations, like seminars, and then you've all gone off in like groups of 10 out to different locations in the area. So you're not, like totally detrimenting the location with people. It's like your normal workshops, but you've got a number going on at the same time in different locations. I hope more things like that happen soon because it gets people together with skills and expertise. It allows a lot more benefit for the attendees as well because they've got a number of photographers to learn from, a number of photographers to connect with, and it's a nice kind of weekend or week-long event, which, of course isn't the cheapest of things to go to, but they get a lot of value from it, a lot of experience, and I kind of hope more things like that happen in the future. I think it would be really, really exciting.
Yeah, I went to the... Yeah, no, it definitely would be. That sounds like the start of a plan, though, that does, Kim.
Yeah.
I went to the photography show for the first time last year, I think it was, and I was doing a talk there, and I found it. I mean, I enjoyed doing the talk and things, and I just found it a little bit disappointing because it was so much, and I'm sure it's probably always been the case, but I found it so much about the gear. And although the different companies are trying to put on talks about being creative and about the more artistic side of it, it's still there to shill gear. Like that's its primary purpose, isn't it? And it's a marketing tool for the industry, which is fair enough. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But it was making me want to attend more conferences, like a proper photography conference that's about the photography itself, and other, maybe, I mean, you might want to mix it in with filmmaking and nature, I don't know, but to have a conference where you can get lots of good talks and lots of good panels and lots of great people just coming to watch and interact and meet people. I mean, I think on Landscape have done some stuff like that in the past, and probably the pandemic has put a halt to some of that stuff. But that's something I really love to get involved in, getting that excitement of that annual thing that you can, that annual thing you can go to where you're just amongst friends and you're amongst your audience and you're amongst other people who love photography, but without it being stuffy. Do you know what I mean? Like having a really kind of fun, for want of a better word, vibe. Like have a really sort of creative. And lots of young people come as well. Do you know what I mean? That's that kind of but just something that gets you inspired and excited about photography.
Yeah. There's definitely more scope for that.
It doesn't exist at the moment, does it?
No, well, maybe this is a discussion people will hear, and maybe within ourselves it's something that we can create in the future. Because the photography show is something I've always wanted to go to, and I have been invited the last few years. But I think to me it's always been the travelling distance. But I think if I did get invited again, I would go just for the experience. But yeah, it is. I just know it's all about gear and it's all about the technicalities. And it's like I kind of want to go to something where I'm actually meeting people who you can potentially become friends with, who you can potentially collaborate with, who you can just have an experience that you'll remember forever, and where you're learning things that are inspiring you, not just learning how to do photography or what the latest camera is. It's like, no, I actually want to listen to people's stories, to feel inspired to head out there and do more of what I'm doing. So yeah,
absolutely. I think that's the sort of thing that sort of conference where you can go to and you're listening to people talk during the day and you're watching like a couple of videos, but then in the evening you can go and socialise with people, and go for dinner with people or have drinks with people. I think that'd be really exciting. But I think it's the sort of thing that if someone did organise, that should be getting good sponsorship from some of the camera manufacturers or some of the companies in the photography industry. That's the sort of thing that's going to, I think, moving forward, because they're under threat as well. Like as Apple and Samsung make better and better phones, less and less people are buying cameras. So I think some of these camera companies need to be doing more to promote that photography community and not just using us to sell. Not just using us as a line of revenue. I think they need to be seeing it as more of a symbiotic relationship rather than just their customers. So I mean, I do have a few ideas about trying to make something like that happen, but then the sort of pandemic and lockdowns got in the way, and I mean, I don't know what your experience of that was, but I felt like. I think a lot of people have sort of got into this kind of, got into this fog of just not going out and not being sociable. And it's I think it's left a long-term hangover for a lot of people to be able to get back to normal. And I've only recently sort of felt like I've got back to full speed and wanting to do stuff again and wanting to go out and wanting to go places. So I think we've got some catching up to do with some of that sort of stuff. Yeah, I guess it's routine, isn't it, and habits. And when you get out of the routine of going out and doing things and socialising, it becomes something you become anxious about, because you're like, I'm not used to people, I'm not used to events, and you kind of have got used to that kind of solitude. But then equally, you then become lonely and you withdraw, and then you feel. Yeah, it's breaking that kind of barrier of getting over that again and getting back to where maybe people were. And Absolutely. It's definitely happening. But as you say, there has definitely been a big hangover with that. We're kind of coming up to the hour now, Adam. So I think that's probably a very, very good place to end. But thank you so much for coming today, because it's been a lot of interesting, quite thought-provoking discussions that I think we've had today that many people will hopefully benefit from. And if anyone that doesn't know about you and your work would like to connect with you, where can they go to find you? Thanks. I mean, it's been brilliant chatting to you. I always love talking about photography. I also then love it when it digresses away to sort of other areas. I don't know if you watch. I don't know if you've seen the program Ted Lasso, but there's a character in that who just always says, he says football is life all the time, because that's his passion. But I kind of feel like that about photography, and it's kind of literally capturing these moments of your life. So if you don't put some of your experience in your life into your photography, then it may not be as good as it could possibly be if you just stick into that entirely technical aspect. I mean, I just love it, and I love talking about it and seeing other people's work, and I've loved your videos over the years. So thanks for having me. If you, I think probably the best place to follow me is on my YouTube channel at First Man Photography. You can catch me on Twitter more so recently, and I'm at Adam Karnacz. I'll let you figure that out. I think if you search First Man Photography, you might find me anyway. But yeah, or you can check out my tutorials at rawroom.online. That's probably enough to keep people going, isn't it? And then that's me.
Brilliant. Well, thank you again, Adam. It's been an absolute pleasure to connect with you and to have this discussion. So yeah, thank you.
Cheers, Kim. Take care.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this week's podcast. It really does mean the world to me. If you'd like to get further involved with the Photographic Connections community, including taking part in our monthly challenges and accessing our monthly teaching webinar, head over to photographicconnections.com now for full details. And now that this podcast has come to an end, there's only one thing left for you to do. It's time to pick up your camera and head outdoors. There's so many incredible photographic opportunities just waiting for you to discover.